but I'll be on it always, always and forever.
Guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today is actually like a very good day. Like I'm excited about today because I get to have a conversation with a friend who is going to tell us about like her study abroad journey, how she transitioned from like her master's program into like PhD. And I'm excited to have this conversation because I don't know like what the future holds. So hearing from someone's personal experience like goes a very long way to prepare you if you're also looking forward into going that way as well. So I'm not going to talk much, but let's get right into the conversation.
Hi everyone, I'm Ophelia and I'm a third year PhD candidate at Brandeis University. Okay, so let's get started. All right, so what motivated me to do a PhD?
Right.
So during my master's, I did my master's at the Clinton School of Public Service, and during that time, the curriculum was such that we had to do a lot of field work. And I remember as part of my field work, I had to work in this community in Arkansas, and the research was on women's labor force development. And what we did was we had to go to the field, collect data and analyze the data and then make recommendations. And then after the whole process was done, we were there one time and the community, like they sent us feedback as to how our recommendations were helping them. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. This is like the power of research, you know, seeing how your work is making such impact in the lives of people. And so with that, I was like, the instant that came to me is that maybe I can do this full time. Maybe I should pursue a PhD and learn more about how to do like a rigorous research. And so I started, you know, searching for schools. That's a it's a different story.
The searching for schools is like the headache.
Like
honestly,
I'm telling
like
you.
every time people are like, oh, I want to study abroad, and I'm like, okay, let's look for schools, and everyone's like, oh, it's long. But if you don't look for the schools too, like how would you even like start the process in the first place? Packing the research, no, how would we do it? Because I like the fact that she said like that particular community service kind of influenced you to transition. So if that hadn't happened, would you have like opted to work like OPT?
Yes, definitely. I think I would have worked. But for me, and this is the thing about PhD, I think that beyond the doctor title, which is really cool, if you're not motivated to do it, you're going to quit along the way. You have to be really motivated and very passionate about something in order to work for it for like 4 to 5 years of your life, right? So I guess after, you know, that research happened and everything, I was like, okay, so what can I do? What kind of PhD can I pursue? And so I started looking into international development, like policy work and all of that, until I found my school, a social policy PhD degree, and it was just a very good fit. I think the thing with PhDs is that once you start, for most PhDs, the first 2 years is just like masters, right? Because even at some schools, you get a master's after the first 2 years. So it's just a lot of coursework. But the coursework really revolve around how to do research, how to use data to make very informed decisions, and you know how you're going to write that into a dissertation. They teach you all of that, so you don't have to guess what you're supposed to do. You are actually taught in your first 2 years, you know, how to conduct the research. And then after that, you write your comprehensive exam. When you pass that, you start the proposal stage. You go collect your data and then you do your dissertation.
Okay, so before we get to the comprehensive exam, like let's talk about like the whole process, starting the whole PhD. How many schools did you look into like applying before finally getting into Brandeis University?
I applied to about 7 schools. Yes. It's a lot of schools.
Application fee.
Yes. I applied. But the thing is, for most of the schools, they were waiving it for people from developing countries.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and sometimes you can just email program coordinators
Right.
for application fee waivers. Yeah, and I did that. So
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So that was
So
helpful.
7 schools did you like get admitted into? Like how many schools did you get admitted
I think
into?
I got admitted into 4 of them.
Okay.
Yeah. And the other 3, they were not good fits for me.
Right.
And that's the other thing too with applying for PhDs. It has to be a fit. I think the other schools that I applied to was the University of Arizona for like gender PhD. And in my resume and in my work, I had not done a lot of gender research, right? So it was not a fit. And so sometimes I tell people that you can write the best statement of purpose, you can put in the best application, but if it's not a fit, you're not going to get in. It's not because you're not good enough or anything, but they just don't do that kind of research. So the fit is very important when you're looking for schools.
So let's talk about the statements of purpose. Like, did you talk about your research interest in your statements of purpose? Like, what exactly went into it? Because I feel that of PhD is different from that of like masters, because more or less like the PhD one has to be more detailed. But like, let's talk about it. How did you, like, what are some cues or tips like that worked for you for your statements of purpose?
Oh, definitely. I think I edit a lot of people's SOP, so we can even do a video about this at a later time.
Okay,
so
sure.
We'll get in touch about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the first is, of course, your introduction. That is your hook. You need to really get your reader to continue reading your SOP.
Okay.
So I started mine with like a quote about like, policy stuff. And then, of course, I talked about, secondly, you talk about your educational background, how your education has, transformed your life and has led to where you are currently. And then I talked about some work experiences that I had. I didn't have a lot, but I just talked about them either way. And then after that, I talked a little bit about my research experiences, because it's a PhD program. You can actually add the research experiences to the education paragraph as well. And then after that, I talked about the school that I'm applying to and why that school. And I talked about how great their teachers are, which is honestly still very incredible. They are incredible people. The city where the school is located in. I did
all of this things.
Yes, I did a thorough research on like the school, because that was my dream school. I really wanted to go to Brandeis. And after that, after the school, I talked about my future goals and how getting a PhD will help me accomplish those future goals. And then I did my conclusion, and that was it. Yeah.
Wow.
It was about 7 paragraphs, really.
How many pages?
It was 4 pages. Yeah. But I don't think it has to be that long. I think for PhD, 3 is fine. 3 to 4. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So how about like your resume? Did you have to like modify it to suit each school, since you're applying to like 7 schools? Or you just used like one resume all through? Probably like the statements of purpose that you had to change it to suit all like the schools you're applying to.
Yeah, I think for the resume, I stuck with one resume, and the statement of purpose I'll change. But for example, when I talk about the school, I have to, talk about it in the school. So yeah.
So let's talk about like research, faculty. Did you reach out to like any faculty person, like introducing yourself? I'm interested in working with you. This is my area of interest, which I think like aligns. Did you like do any of those stuff?
Yes, I actually did. For my current school though, they did not require you to do that, but I did it anyways. But for the other schools that I got into, I reached out to professors. There's a way that you have to also write those kinds of emails. You have to actually look at the kind of work that those professors are doing.
Yeah.
And you write an email that aligns with their work and ask. So you end the email by asking for an opportunity to meet with them, to talk to them about their research and how like your research can possibly align. And and you can even ask in the email if they are taking on students this year and stuff like that. For some schools, I know for most Canadian schools, you have to get an advisor before you can even put in your application. But for most US schools, it's not that that. But it's just a proactive thing to do.
That's true. I mean, because obviously you're PhD students, like prospective PhD students, so they expect like your research and like your level of thinking to be different from like that.
Exactly.
Yes. Let's talk about funding. which is like the most important thing
Oh,
for
yes.
every international student. Funding. The schools you applied to and the ones you got into, did you happen to get like funding for all of them? Were they like full, partial, like?
Yeah, so this is the thing that a lot of people do not actually know about PhDs. Most PhDs are fully funded.
Okay.
Yes, and so for most of the schools that I applied to, I got the funding like in a form of a research assistantship. So that is where you work for the school, they pay your tuition and fees, and then they give you a stipend.
Okay.
Right? But for the school that I'm currently at, we have this thing called a fellowship.
Okay.
Right. So with that, you still get your tuition and fees paid for, but you don't have to do a research assistantship or a graduate assistantships. But not a lot of schools offer fellowships. But it's like the most ideal like choice.
So how do you survive? Like, do you get like a stipend?
Yes, you still get like your stipend.
So you're not working.
You don't have to work to get your stipend. Yeah. So if you were to take on an additional job, you get paid for that separately. Yeah. But for most PhDs, the funding is tied to RA, GA, or TA. But for my school, it's not like that. Once you get in, you get the fellowship, they take care of everything. And then if you want to make an additional money, you be a TA, RA, or GA.
Whilst you're still with the fellowship?
Yes, once you're still on the fellowship. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but so a lot of schools do not have fellowship options. Most schools have the regular, like, be a TA and then we'll take care of the tuition and fees and give you a stipend for working.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I never knew.
Yes. Yeah.
These kind of things, I can kind of hey, like you really have to research. You see, that's what like I keep saying, like this whole study abroad journey, it never ends. Like the research and the reading, like it's very extensive because from everything you're saying, I can, especially like when you're talking about your statements of purpose, I can like just deduce that like you had to research. Like the research is like the core part of everything. Because if you don't research, like how would you even know all of these things and even like talk about it? So like going into like PhD, what was your preconceived notion about PhD? Like did you, because me I've heard a PhD, a thing, like I mean it's hard, like it's difficult to do. Your PhD is going to take like your whole life, your social life. I mean my social life, it needs me past everything because
it's very important.
Like my social life is really important to me. So it just keeps me like thinking like, can I do this? And I like the fact that you said you need to make up your mind. Like mentally you have to be prepared that this is something you want to do, because it's not like undergrad where you can say, oh, I came to escort the masses.
Exactly.
So like I'm chilling. I'm a paramedic third class with you, like I still graduate.
Six make degrees.
I mean, like, still make the degree, like, but like masters, and then coming here from my personal experience, like the whole academic structure is completely different from like what we are used to, because I mean we can both relate since like we kind of have similar backgrounds. And then like now coming to do it, my first time in the US going to class the first week during my master's program, I bet you like my first week it was just like
what's going on?
Like I went home and I'm like, did I make the right decision? Like I was so lost. But then it was that point where I just told myself like I didn't come this far just to come this far. Like I had a plan, so I need to like follow it to its course. So I like the fact that you emphasize on like mindset, especially with like PhD. Talking about PhD and mindset, would you recommend, or even before that, like what has been some of like your best experiences? Because you're in your third year, so at least there should be like some one or two things that keep you moving, because some people like first 2 years they are just like out like quick because it's hard.
That's a really good question and a tough one too. I think that for what has been keeping me going, number one, I would say God. Like definitely, I feel like in this process my faith has really helped me. Just my belief that God is able to help me and the Holy Spirit is able to give me the wisdom that I need to do what I'm supposed to do. That is like at the top. And when I started Hetty, I'm not gonna lie, it was very difficult. There were times that I sometimes tell my friends, there were times after school I'll literally be walking home and I'll be crying, just like I'm gonna quit this thing today. I'm not gonna do this anymore.
Now must sneak up we are crying then PhD. Hey,
Yeah. But you know, I think what a PhD gives you is tenacity, the ability to just stay and tell yourself, no matter what, no matter how much they stretch me, no matter how difficult this thing is, I'm going to stay. Because like there's greatness in me, I can do this, right? You have to just keep telling yourself that and keep pushing. And with regards to like balance and all the things that you have to do, I think that in a PhD program, I've really learned how to compartmentalize. Biggest thing that I've learned, knowing that I am also a human being. There's time for me to study. There's time for me to go out with my friends. There's time for me to sleep. You have to be able to balance all of that, or else what happens is that you'll be really good academically. Your research will be excellent and everything, but your social life will be so boring. And that's not like a good balance. You have to be able to balance it out. So what I normally do is that every week I'll write down my schedule, what I'm going to do every hour of the day, like from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Yes, it's like you have to compartmentalize. That's the only way that I can function, and also make sure that I am enjoying my life, but also making good progress.
What did you say the word is again?
Enjoying my life.
Okay.
Yes. And also making good progress towards like finishing the PhD. With regards to some of my best moments, I think one, passing my comprehensive exam, yes, and two, there's December defending my proposal.
Whoosh.
Yes. Those
Okay.
those are very big moments in my life. Whenever I think about them, I begin to like smile.
Yeah.
So yeah, a PhD, beyond the stretch, beyond the challenges, is really rewarding. I think this is probably one of the most rewarding journeys that I have been on in my life, because I've seen the growth. One time I was telling some of my classmates that when I look at myself in 2022 when I started this PhD, and now like I can't recognize myself in the mirror because I've had to grow. I've had to learn new things, and I was the kind of person who will not speak up. Oh my god, in the PhD program, if you should not speak up, you're going to be there. You're going to be there. So I've had to like really come out of my bubble and really grow and become very confident in some of the things that I do and some of the things that I say, because the research is your research. If you're not confident in it, and if you cannot communicate your research in a way that it has to be communicated in, like no one is going to believe you.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like you have to sell it out there. So I think with that, like I've had to become very bold and very confident in my work.
That's true.
So, yeah.
Like, wow. Hey, talk about good moments. You mentioned some bad moments where like you're walking home and you wanted to cry and say you're quitting. You're quitting for what? What have been like some down or low moments, like if you want to share?
Yeah. I think Hetty keeps asking difficult questions. You guys, these are difficult questions. But as I said earlier, before I start everything, I think the first thing that I do is to tell God to give me wisdom. Like, Holy Spirit, please give me wisdom to do this. And if I feel like this is beyond my ability, I can't understand, I take a break, you know? And in moments when I felt like I couldn't do it, I don't have what it takes, I'll sometimes call my mom, or I'll call some of my friends who are also doing PhDs.
It's very true. Like, sorry to interrupt, but like I always say, and I think I mentioned this in one of my videos, that like if you have a very strong connection back home in your home country, don't break that relationship, because like it comes in handy. Because there are times where you feel like giving up, but just that one phone call with like an old friend will just like rejuvenate and rekindle. Like, and please, if you get a chance to go home to your home country for some dirty December or something, please jump on it, because that trip can be very refreshing and like rejuvenating when you come back the next semester. Take that from me, like personal experience. It worked.
It
It worked magic in my final semester. I'm not going to lie.
That's
Like
good.
taking that trip back home and coming back, like it really helped. Especially because some of us think it's the doctor title that's nice for me. And I'll be working around Dr. Aish. That title, like, but like, would you recommend, aside the fact that you're gonna get like the doctor attached to your name, just something that you think is worth the journey, like?
So wherever I slept today, I'm not going to sleep there again. These questions. These questions. She didn't tell me she was going to ask me this, by the way. She didn't
I
tell
told
me.
her we're gonna have a conversation because if I had told her, she'll prep herself before coming. So I wanted to get her on this.
I think it depends. I think that's the best answer I can give. It depends. It depends on what you want to do with your life. I think that for some degrees and for some careers, you do not need to get a PhD, right? Maybe for some people who are really motivated to get the doctor title, maybe they can go for it. But I think that once you enter into a PhD, it goes beyond the doctor title. It's the growth that you are going to get out of it, is the mindset. Like how I used to think in 2022, I can tell you that's not how I think now, because the classes, the questions, the challenges that I've had to face. And so it has to be more than the doctor title, or else you're going to give up, right? So I think for people who are looking into doing a PhD, my question to you would be, what do you want? What do you want out of life? What is it that you want to do at the end of your PhD? Do you want to be a consultant? Do you want to be a professor? Or no, do you just want the doctor title, right? That's okay too if that's what you want. But what I'm saying is it has to be beyond that, because just wanting a doctor title will not sustain you for 45 years in a PhD program that is very rigorous and very challenging. So what do you want? And when you answer that question, then maybe you can see if you really want to do a PhD or not.
So just to like sum it all up, like you said so many things I'm trying to deep like if you think it's a doctor title. But I cannot go 4 or 5 years because of doctor title.
Exactly.
Like I mean you definitely want to. I mean, like, I'm trying to make fun of it, but like, obviously, you have to put in the work if you want to get a title. Like, it's worth it. Like, it's a flex. I mean, but you still gotta put in the work eventually. So, like, what will be like your final words for people looking into getting into PhD? I mean, transitioning from masters, but I know people like can get into PhDs right from undergrad now. But like from your personal experience, like what would be the best advice you can give? Like apart from making up your mind to chase it, like what would be like your advice to anybody who tells you, hi Ophelia, like I want to get into a PhD program? What advice would you give? Before we even get to that, something just dawned on me. Like what do you know now that you wish you had known before getting into the PhD program?
Oh yes, that finding a research topic for your dissertation is so difficult. So you have to start thinking about it even before you start the PhD. Yes. And that should be your focus. Finding out what you want to do for your dissertation. Because when you find it, your advisor is going to tell you, it's too big. Scope. Reduce the scope. So if I could go back to the summer of 2022 before starting PhD, I would have used that summer to really think about what I wanted to research on. Because once you do that, you already know what you want to do. So in your first 2 years of coursework, all the things that you are doing in your classes, the papers, you can use your topic to be writing all of those papers. And by the time you are done, you have probably developed your literature section of your dissertation.
Yeah, that's actually very smart.
Yes. And that's what I did not do.
Right. That's actually very smart. I never thought about it because even in masters, true, that actually drew my attention to one of my classes was about research, and then the professor asked us to come up with a research topic and do like the whole literature review. And then I'm now thinking about it, like if I had known my topic, I would have used that, and then I wouldn't have had all this stress and be breaking down and be crying and say, I cannot do this thing. That's actually very true. That's very. Let's circle back to my final question. Like, what advice would you give to somebody wanting to get into a PhD program? Like, from what you said, what have you used this mindset to apply to as many schools as you can? And then like getting the right topic, but like I mean, what other things would you add to it to give to anybody who's watching and wants to get into a PhD, either from a master's or like straight from undergrad?
Don't think about the time. Time is important, of course, but don't think too much about the time that you talk yourself out of getting a PhD. Because I've met people that say, okay, PhDs will take like almost 5 years. Like in 5 years, I'll be 30 something. Guess what? Whether or not you do the PhD or not, in 5 years you'll be 30 something. So why not do it? And then in 5 years you'll be doctor something, you know? Like for somebody who really wants to do it, that is.
I like the sound of that.
Yes.
That's like double accomplishment.
Yes. Don't think about the time if you really want to do it. But for people who are still deciding what you want to do, I will advise that you critically think. If you are very interested in research, right, and start looking at PhD programs that fit your research area, and then start reaching out to the school, talk to the program directors, even reach out to people on LinkedIn who are in those PhD programs. Let them review your SOPs for you, talk to them about the program, because they have first-hand information, more than what any website can give you, right? So reach out to people, make those connections, and think about what you want to do before you start your PhD. Think about your research. Yes, that's what I'll say.
Okay. I'll think about what I want to do before I start my research.
Yes. Think about it.
But like, I'm actually glad we could have this conversation because it's been very like insightful. There's so many things that I didn't know. Like I said, I had preconceived notions. But like as I'm having this conversation, I think, I'm thinking, fingers crossed. Yeah. But definitely. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the comment section and we'll do our best to respond to them. Until then, I will see you in our next YouTube video.
Okay, bye and subscribe.
But I'll be on it always, always and better.